Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you're watching around the world. Once again, we're here to talk about AI and project management. I'm extremely happy to have yet another global project management rock star to speak to this afternoon. So sparing your blushes, Sarina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, it's great to be here. I'm Sarina Arcari, and I've had a long career in the PMO space, and I'm currently serving in a volunteer capacity for the Project Management Institute on their global board of directors. But I think today we're going to be focusing on some of the consulting work that I've done with Arcari Solutions, which is my own consulting firm in the PMO space.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sparing the time, Sarina. I'm going to dive into our questions in and around AI and project management. I guess the first question I always ask people is about, what use cases do you see for AI in project management?
Well, I think we're only just beginning to scratch the surface with our imagination of what AI might be able to do for us. But one of the things that I find immediately right now is that people are using the term AI to mean a lot of different things, and sometimes not realizing that we've been using some artificial intelligence for quite some time. Maybe not large language models like ChatGPT. That certainly brings a new dimension. But I think overall, I'll stick with my role as an enterprise program management EPMO type leader. I think what I would be looking for the most, and what we were always aiming for, was sort of a crystal ball. We really wanted to have decision support for our executive team and for our board of directors, so that they had really good, solid data upon which to base their decisions. And I'm a firm believer that if an executive doesn't have that data to especially base a no decision on, they'll just say yes and we'll figure it out. And that lands in the PMO's lap to try to figure it out. And that's not a really great way to do business. So I'm hoping that we get some more crystal ball capability with the help of AI. I think also, we as individual practitioners have to be prepared to be working alongside of and be supported by technology. I haven't actually seen an actual robot sitting next to a project manager yet, but I can totally imagine that happening in the not too distant future. And, there are lots of tasks that I didn't particularly love doing, that I would love to hand off to a machine to help me with a lot of that reporting stuff and calculating things. I think would be super helpful, so that I could spend more time on the people side.
Yeah, I think I mean it's a really good summary, Serena, and the idea of the crystal ball I think is fantastic, and in a way it sort of chimes with everything a PMO's trying to do, be on the front foot and what have you. So I think that's brilliant from my point of view. I must talk to you briefly about having a robot sitting next to me. So from some of the people will be, taking sharp gasps of breath. Others will be thinking, oh, great, it can do my progress reports or my ironing or whatever the particular requirement is. And I just wanted to sort of say that, the definition of robots comes in lots of different shapes and sizes. It doesn't have to be a sort of humanoid robot. Do you have sort of examples of, perhaps where in your experience, you almost had early views of what you're thinking about with that robots idea?
Sure. And I mean, I chose the word specifically because I think that is people's fear, right? I like this person that looks like me, but that's actually a machine sitting next to me, helping me. And when I said earlier that I think we've been using artificial intelligence in different forms for several years, in my last corporate role, I was working for the U.S. National Passenger Railroad Corporation, and we were managing a very large capital infrastructure portfolio of projects. And when I arrived there in 2016, they didn't have any technology in place whatsoever.
Mm.
And I think that, what we aimed to do over the 5 years that I was there was build not only a portfolio management and at an enterprise level tool that would give visibility, but we really, at the end of that 5 years, we're trying to get it to be more predictive, right? To
Yeah,
tell us to what to expect, to get to that crystal ball feeling. Now, we had a lot of master schedulers who were in the background trying to get the data to the system so that we could have that crystal ball view. And I think in the future, those schedulers probably will be helping program the machine, but maybe
yeah,
not having to do all of that calculating. Here in the United States, when we're doing a government funded program, earned value project management is still very much expected when you're
yeah,
spending federal dollars. And so, I can see machines helping us tremendously in that space.
yeah,
It's very labor intensive, and there are very few, at least in the United States, very few practitioners who are at the level that the government requires. And so I can see a huge opportunity there for us here in the government funded space to have the machines really
and,
support
and
that earned value project management
well, I was going to
methodology.
say, you mentioned on sort of capability shortages around people, and no doubt they come with a very high cost as
Yes,
well.
yes.
What jumped into my mind was the thought that actually one of the benefits was that you might not just have the access to that individual's knowledge, you could sort of pool the knowledge across this scarce resource, as it were. So, I think that's an interesting dimension as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, getting the knowledge out of the heads of those few people here in the United States, it's mostly Department of Defense, Department of Energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people practicing scheduling and estimating at the highest level are
Mm-hmm.
usually on those programs, and, rightfully so. But if we could get what's in their heads accessible in, a large language model type environment,
Yeah.
the problem is it's sometimes secret stuff. So, we have to be careful about the security of the data that goes into those models. But certainly, it's the Delphi method at its
Yeah.
best, right? We get all the brain trust into one place, and we can pull that data. Now, still to be determined how we validate the truth of the data, the accuracy of the data. But hasn't that always been our challenge? I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
clean data.
I have this conversation with other people about, when you talk about bias, well, what's difference between that bias and a human suggesting something as well? It's a really interesting debate as well. I just want to go back to something you said there about the changing role of schedulers as well. You were talking about maybe the computational bit could be done better. Does that does that mean we're wiping out jobs here? Is that what you're thinking?
I think every time technology advances, we have this fear, right? I think it could be an evolution of a
Yeah,
job role. I think that we still would need the expertise of these humans to be able to validate the what the
yeah,
machines are telling us, right? I mean,
yeah,
at least in the earliest days, right?
yeah,
Because it's nascent still, and we have to question what we're getting from the machine just because I mean, garbage in, garbage out, that doesn't
yeah,
change,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So that still is an everlasting law, I guess, of data integrity, right? And so I think the humans will always have to be the validators, the testers, the sort of probing on, is this really valid? Um, and so, sure, jobs can change. But,
Yeah.
I remember, I'm old enough to remember, when the internet became a thing and,
Yeah,
everybody was like, oh, it's going to ruin everything. And, like any advancement, I think in technology, you can use it for good or you can use it for evil. And I think that also is a, immutable law of the universe, right? There's
yeah.
always two sides to the coin. And so, as this technology continues to become more and more a part of our life, I think it's on us as practitioners to make sure that it's used for the best and highest purposes.
Yeah, and I guess, government, professional bodies, universities all have a role in that,
Sure.
as well as, you know, obviously the integrity of commercial companies as well.
Yeah, and I think as practitioners, maybe even senior practitioners, right? We have the experience. We've got the time in the saddle. We know when something doesn't smell quite right.
Mm,
And
mm,
I
mm,
think that, yeah, does it change the role that we play? Probably, but I
mm,
don't think it eliminates our roles.
mm,
I
mm,
think
mm, mm,
it may evolve our roles, and I welcome that evolution. I think, at least at this point in my career, I appreciate being able to use my wisdom and all of those hard-earned lessons from earlier in my career to save somebody else from making the same misstep in the
yeah,
future. And I think
yeah.
that, what, I welcome that. I welcome
I
the
love the
change.
phrase. I can't remember where it came from, but leaping into the understanding zone. It feels like that it would enable us to get to that moment more rapidly than you know. I don't know in your experience that big team of people that were doing the prediction, as it were.
Mhm.
It feels like we could do that more rapidly and then debate what the insights that are being told.
Exactly. And I think that we can educate the decision makers more quickly as well. That was always the human side. I think will persist, and especially at the decision maker level. I don't imagine that there'll be a time in my career where there aren't humans making the top decisions in an organization, and their familiarity with our profession is widely variable across the
Yeah.
planet, right? Some know, some don't, and the ones who don't still have the authority and the responsibility to execute on these large initiatives. And if we are spending inordinate amount of time bringing them up to speed on how we can help them, if we can take that down and just get right to work, I think, yay. I mean, I'd be all
That's
very
fantastic.
excited about that.
Better decision making and hopefully more successful projects. Um,
Yes.
I just come back to you mentioned it a couple of times. I just wanted to come back to it because it is a salient point. You were talking about data and the team that used to prepare data. I can't have a conversation about AI without acknowledging data. I think it starts to be in everybody's psyche. But just wanted to get your feel around the importance of data.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have the words to articulate how important it is. And again, this varies widely depending on the organization in question. Um, and I have been at organizations that were very sophisticated, and when we said X field contained X
Mm,
data,
mm, mm,
we all
mm,
had a
mm.
common understanding of that.
Mm, mm, mm,
I've
mm.
also been at organizations that would put varying data in that same X field.
Mm,
And
mm, mm.
so it was, I mean, all over the place. No data governance, no
Mm,
data
mm, mm, mm,
integrity. And
mm,
so
mm,
you'd
mm.
query that field and you'd get all kinds of mumbo
Yeah.
jumbo. So I think that we can't escape that. I really do. I mean, I'm serious when I say, garbage in, garbage out is a universal principle that
Yeah.
I don't think ever goes away. And so, how do we validate whether something is good, solid data with integrity or it's garbage?
Mm,
And
mm,
how do we educate the input? However,
mm,
that probably humans at
mm,
some
mm,
point putting that data in, right, and making
mm,
sure that all those humans have the same understanding of what goes in that field.
mm, mm,
Right? What
mm,
are we talking about? So it can get
mm,
very granular, and I
mm.
think with the amount of data that we're all juggling on a daily basis, it gets very daunting very quickly.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were speaking because I was going to raise another subject and I was thinking about the parallels with data and the subject I was going to raise and I think you've inadvertently touched on it a couple of times, which is timeline. I think you used the words I can't imagine today or maybe at this moment in time
Mm,
and I definitely think there's a dimension about timeline. For the moment, I'm just going to bring it back to data, which is, from my point of view, I was thinking, the norm of where data maturity is, there's going to be a step up and it's like everybody is going to be at a certain level in the future as we all wake up to this importance. Would you concur with that view?
I would. And I have a probably a slightly less popular opinion about how we interact with data in the future, because it's so voluminous and the sources and the inputs are so varied. I think that our human intuition, our gut reactions,
Mm,
have to be combined. Like
mm,
we have to improve our own discernment,
mm,
right? We
mm, mm,
have to
mm,
be
mm, mm.
able to interface with this data sources and look at what's being presented to us, but then gut check ourselves and say, does this
Yeah,
feel right? Does this sound right based on my experience? And so, I see a plethora of possibilities for the machines to help us, and we still need to continue to evolve our own inner capabilities.
yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, I think that's
Well, I think it's a really interesting point, because, we don't want to stifle creativity, do we? And
no,
and and
no.
and I guess it depends on your disposition, whether it's seen as an enabler or a restrictor. I mean, obviously, somebody like myself sees it. It's an enabler, and actually, it would push you even further once you've got that base level in. Perhaps I would say that. It sounds like you're in a similar vein.
I generally am a glass half full kind of person, so I feel like, um, you know, like I said earlier, there's a yin and yang to any new invention, right? You can
Yeah,
use it for good or evil. It's up to us, those of us who practice the profession and are committed to it, to make sure that we stay on the good side. And there'll be some missteps, right? I mean, test and learn, test and learn, test and
yeah,
learn. Nobody's got all the answers yet, and maybe we'll never have them. Um, as long as humans are involved in the execution of projects, I think
yeah,
humans will be involved in the management of projects. I mean,
yeah,
that's my belief.
yeah.
Um, we'll see,
Okay,
I
I'll
guess.
just touch on that time horizon
Yeah,
again.
I
But
know.
yeah,
I
no, I
mean,
definitely agree in the
I,
immediacy, and whatever immediacy means. Oh, and I must go back to your point about educating decision makers. I
yeah,
think this is such a valid point, and I think in the short term might be one of the bigger barriers that we're seeing. Once we get over this technical data type barrier, it's going to be about people. And I just think what you said there is just so important about the future success of this. I don't
yeah,
know whether you want
yeah.
to add
I
anything.
think I'm not sure that most executive sponsors understand their role well enough to believe what I'm about to say, but I think that a suboptimal executive sponsor can kill a project faster than anything else.
Yeah,
And usually they are only suboptimal because they do not understand the importance of their role, and they have little time to learn it.
yeah,
I don't know why we're not teaching it in whatever venues that executives educate themselves, but I do think it's an opportunity for our profession in general. And conversely, I believe that more executives need to be pulled from the project management ranks. I mean, there are projects and programs going on this planet. There are people building cities,
mm, mm, mm,
right?
mm, mm,
So
mm,
don't tell me that the program manager who's handling a program like that, some giga program,
mm, mm,
right,
mm.
isn't capable and competent to sit in the C-suite. I don't believe it, right?
Yeah,
I think that maybe even more capable and competent because of the wide view that a competent program manager has to have. They really need to be able to see across the entire enterprise, all the disciplines, understand how all the pieces move together. Why wouldn't that person be the automatic choice
yeah,
for chief operating officer, chief administrative officer, chief program officer,
yeah, yeah,
right? But we haven't gotten there yet. We're not there yet. I
yeah,
don't think that most C-suite executives have project management backgrounds. And I think that, we need to bridge that gap somehow as a profession, either
yeah,
teaching the ones that are in power more about project management and how it can really help them be successful,
yeah,
or pulling us out of the profession and
yeah.
into the C-suite.
I totally agree. Although it is a bit turkeys voting for Christmas. So we do need to get there. Maybe there's a little gap there for PMI to try and fill that slot of educating board people around projects. I think I totally agree with that point, as it were. I was just thinking about, we've obviously touched on benefits and concerns as well. I just throw it out to you, either other benefit or concerns that we haven't touched on. Is there anything that you think is desperate for you to tell people about, as it were?
I think the sort of the desperate message, the imperative message that I feel is that even though it's nascent and we don't have it all figured out, and there's going to be a lot of amorphous applications, things work, don't work. I don't think we can sit on the sidelines, right? As professionals, I think we need to dive in. We need to play with these new tools. We need to experiment. We need to push and see where they work and where they don't, and embrace. And we're change agents. Nobody commissions projects to keep everything exactly how it is, right? So we are on the leading edge of change. We can't opt out of this particular change. And so I think that's probably the most imperative message that I would share with people. It's what I tell my clients. It's what I tell, the people that I coach and mentor. Get in the game, right? Learn how it's a new game. Nobody knows all the rules yet. So don't be afraid to make a mistake. Push, right? Push the edge. I think that, it's exciting. If you let it be.
Fantastic. I love that. If there was one action that somebody could take, if it is as simple as that, what do you think that action would be to get this emphasis going around AI and project management in their organization?
I would say find out what tools what's already in the house, what's already on your desktop. Right? A lot of people have stuff. I mean, without naming any particular software suites, there are the very common software suites that are packed with AI right now. They're sitting on many, many desktops around the world. And, we were able to leverage that at my last company by just going to the chief technology officer and saying, as long as it's on the desktop, it's fair game, right? We're not going outside the rules. We're not going to break any security protocols. Oh, no, go ahead. They didn't even know what they had loaded on our desktops, right? And we built an entire portfolio management system with applications that were already sitting on our desktop. So find out what your organization already owns. You don't have to buck the system. Use what they've got, whether they know it's there or not, right? Play, right? Experiment.
Excellent. Leverage that value that's already there. Well, Sarina, it's been fantastic. I definitely could talk to you for much longer, and we've literally scraped the surface. So I really look forward to keeping in contact with you and discussing how this world evolves, and perhaps, chinking the odd glass of wine when we're talking about what time horizon we're talking about. So.
I know. No telling. There is no telling about the time horizon.
Exactly.
Buckle
Thank
your
you so much,
seatbelts.
Sarina.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.